Hello and welcome to the Publicly Challenged Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Oswald, and I hope you join me on my quest for knowledge to become a better public land hunter, angler, and forager. Stick with this and who knows, maybe we will learn something together.
All right, so I'm sitting here and I'm talking to Dan Stevens of Illinois Learn to Hunt. And Dan, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself for everybody listening?
Sure, yeah. So first, thanks for having us on here. We're out here at Deer and Beer Fest in Bloomington, Illinois. Been a good show so far. So, but a little bit about our program. So we're the Illinois Learn to Hunt program, and we're kind of a unique program that's really designed to address this almost systemic decline in the number of hunters that we've seen in recent years. And this is a trend that's really occurring nationwide and has really started to garner, national attention. But this is kind of Illinois' version. And so we're a program that really focuses on adult hunter recruitment. There's a lot of really good programs already established in the state that focus on getting youth outside, whether it's Pheasants Forever, NWTF, Whitetails Unlimited, the Illinois Conservation Foundation. There's all these different groups that focus on youth, hunter recruitment. But there was really nothing for that person who has an interest, but for whatever reason, maybe they grew up in a family that didn't hunt, they don't know any hunters, they've lived in Chicago their whole life. So this program is designed as an educational pathway to give those individuals the confidence and the skill set they need to go hunting.
So how did it come about, though? I mean, you guys recognized that there was a gap there and you lobbied?
Sure.
What happened?
So this is a program that is kind of a cooperative effort between the University of Illinois and the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. And so we are funded through kind of a unique funding mechanism called the Pittman-Robertson Act, also known as the Federal Aid and Wildlife Restoration Act. And so these are grant funds that are distributed annually. But the really cool thing about this funding mechanism is it's essentially an excise tax that's placed on the sale of hunting equipment. So anytime you go buy a firearm, anytime you buy ammunition, anytime you buy a bow or arrows, there's an excise tax that's already pre-built into that price. It's kind of taxed at that manufacturer's level. And then states are awarded that money based on a specific formula from the feds that essentially looks at the number of hunting licenses sold each year, as well as the total land size of the state. And they kind of create this formula that divides that total fund for the country and divides it, how they allocate it to each individual state. The really cool thing about this funding is it can't be just thrown into the Treasury Department. It has very specific use cases, and one of those happens to be hunter education and hunter safety. And so this is how we can use some of those grant funds to run this program. So it's kind of cool in that the more hunters we create, the more PR dollars we're getting. And so it's kind of this self-funding mechanism to some extent.
Absolutely. Some of my favorite hunting spots are actually funded by the Pittman-Robertson Act and restoration programs and stuff like that. Sure. So I totally get it. How did you guys feel about it when, I can't remember his name, actually put forth legislation to try and repeal the Pittman-Robertson Act?
Yeah. It's one of those things that every couple of years somebody gets kind of a spur up their backside to try to, tackle the PR bill. But what I would argue is it's such a unique funding mechanism. It gives us as hunters and target shooters so much say into how wildlife is managed. If that money is, for lack of a better term, we are the funders of conservation in this country. It is the backbone. Absolutely. It is hunters. It is shooters. And if you take that funding mechanism away, first of all, now you got to get that money from elsewhere. And part two, now you're going to have these other groups that are, contributing funding to this, and that's going to give them a little bit more say in how that money's used, how wildlife is managed in the state. And so it's a really important funding mechanism, and I think it doesn't get enough attention from hunters and target shooters that, hey, you guys are the one that is funding conservation in this country.
Yeah. So what does Illinois Learn to Hunt do at like a day-to-day level to try and get outreach and things like that?
Sure. And so we're a little bit of a unique program from some other programs across the country. Every state has kind of delved into this realm of hunter recruitment. Kind of a more broader term we use is Hunter R3. So that's recruitment, that's bringing in new hunters. We have hunter retention, keeping those existing hunters. And then we have re-engagement, so bringing those people who maybe hunted as a kid, but they got busy in life and dropped out. How do we bring them back into the fold? And what's really unique about our program is we are research focused. And so not only do we have these outreach events where we host, mentored hunts, we host Learn to Hunt workshops, webinars, podcasts, video series, but one of the ultimate goals is in addition to education and outreach, is to understanding who these new hunters are, what they need, but more importantly, what is keeping them from hunting. So what are these constraints to participation? What are some of these maybe policy recommendations can be put forth that say, hey, maybe this is an area we need to look at reducing some regulation complexity. Maybe we need to make this process easier and smoother and things like that. So it's really kind of a multi-pronged approach at providing education, but also trying to understand who these new hunters are and what they need to put forth, policy recommendations to make that process easier.
Yeah. What do you see as far as that? Who these new hunters are? Are they children mostly? Are they
That's a really
young
good
adults
question.
now that are getting into it?
Absolutely.
What do you see?
So we're seeing a lot of young adults, especially our biggest market is the Chicagoland area. Obviously, that is kind of the biggest population center in the state, so it does naturally make sense. But what we're seeing is a lot of individuals who, for lack of a better term, have been stuck in that concrete jungle their whole life. And they want to take that next step and not just go outside on a hike. They want to become a part of that system. They want to be a part of the food system. And so that's what we've really been seeing recently is this shift of people who just want to go hunting because they want a new outdoor activity. We're seeing a lot of our participants are really interested in providing that local kind of what we call organic protein for their families.
Yeah,
and so,
even though we know it's heavily GMO and there's a lot of herbicides and pesticides on the stuff that they eat. But, and then that's like people say, oh, this is the most organic meat you get on a duck. And I'm thinking to myself, how is that possible? It's eaten every single field from Canada all the way down to Mississippi. And there's no way that it hasn't eaten that.
Corn.
But maybe if you catch them up in Alberta after they come off the nesting grounds or something like that, you might be okay. But, yeah.
But a lot of it is just, again, becoming a part of that system. And I think we saw it really heavily with COVID. We saw a pretty big uptick in our program participation. And I think a lot of it was just looking at not organic, but the global food system that we've established in this country. We are very reliant on other people to provide food for ourselves and our family. And in terms of the human experience, that's a very new concept for us as humans. Historically, we've hunted and gathered our whole lives up until the past couple generations.
I mean, realistically, you're looking at 60 years or less that people have been fully dependent upon the frail, very frail food system.
Yes.
I mean, you saw during the last pandemic that everything broke down and collapsed and store shelves were empty and all that stuff. And I agree with you. I think that did do a bit of a change in the way people think about it and want to procure food and all that kind of stuff. So these people that come from the concrete jungle, you guys send them a lot towards my way because I'm just south of there. I don't mind it, though. What do you have to say to those people that are critics of that kind of thing? Because I know there is a lot of people who are like, why do you want more people on public land? It's crowded enough. Why would you want to do that? Explain to people why that's important.
Now, I don't disagree that public land in Illinois is crowded, and a lot of that is just the totality of public land we have in this state. If you compare it to every state around us, we are bottom of the barrel in terms of total land access.
You know what bothers me about that, though? So there is quite a bit of public land, especially even like county public land in Illinois.
Especially the forest
non-huntable. There is so much forest preserve. And it seems to me that every single farm where the family, somebody doesn't take it over and it goes up for sale, the state's buying it or the county is buying it and turning it into forest preserve. And that's just huntable land. And some of it every once in a while does get converted. A lot of it around me actually gets turned into culling sites. And it makes me think, okay, I understand the principle and the concept behind it, right? We're dumping but this is what gets me, though. We're dumping entire truckloads full of corn to bring these animals in and then killing them by the hundreds. And then, it sits for a while, and then maybe potentially they turn it over. But then you look at the harvest numbers, and it's like 200 hunter visits, one animal harvested. And it's like, okay, maybe don't totally decimate the area. If you do, let people know that the data is available to look at it and go, wow, is that really even worth taking that one deer out of the population? There's a lot of things like that bother me. That's not you guys. I understand that. That's management from a different aspect. But that is something that's kind of crazy to me.
and I'll kind of add a caveat. One thing you kind of mentioned, this, why do we need more hunters out there? I want to really kind of pinpoint on that point really quick. One of the big things is, again, we kind of really reiterated the importance of funding through hunters and shooters. As this hunting population ages, I mean, we are really, in Illinois, we're losing about 2% of our hunters every year. And so every year that population is getting smaller and smaller, but it's also getting older and older and older. So at some point in the next probably 15 or 20 years, we're really going to see this inflection point where we start to see a big churn and we start to lose a lot of hunters and just naturally aging out of the population. And so it's really important. And if you look at a total graph of hunting license sales in Illinois, it's fairly flat through the 1930s, and we see this huge uptick after World War II. All these veterans were coming back, getting involved in the outdoors, and that was kind of the heyday of hunting license sales in Illinois. Ever since then, we've just seen it steadily go down and down and down. And it's really important, again, not only for funding, but also to manage wildlife populations is a big one, especially, you kind of brought up some of the CWD sharpshooting. And if we can naturally use hunters to do that and to create new hunters through that, I think that's a great goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just makes me think, though, all the northern Illinois, there's a lot of ground.
There is.
That could be hunted and managed.
Yes.
As long as people are trained properly.
Sure.
Maybe a vetting process so they can actually, that they can place an arrow on target, something like that. And I know a lot of places used to do that, and they don't even do that anymore because of the new permitting system where you go online and get it versus a qualification. But it does bring up a good point, though, because the amount of dollars you're losing, at what point do we see a tipping point, do you think, to where there won't be that funding anymore?
I don't know, but it's coming. It really is coming. Because if you go back to what we said about how that money is allocated, that specific formula, so if we're losing hunters, not only are we losing people purchasing guns, purchasing ammunition, purchasing other hunting equipment that may fall under that Pittman-Robertson dollars, but we're also losing a chunk of license sales, which, if you remember, that's how that money is allocated at the federal level to decide how much each individual state receives. And so as we start to lose hunters, not only are we losing those PR contributions of them purchasing equipment, but on the back end, we're also losing that kind of portion of the formula that allocates how many dollars Illinois receives from these PR dollars.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting, and there's a lot of other states doing really interesting work kind of in this realm. Illinois, in terms of the grand scheme of things, is relatively new to Hunter R3. It's something that's been on the radar for maybe 5 or 6 years, where Wisconsin's been doing stuff like this and focusing on it since the 90s.
I think I've got a friend that does something very similar to that in Iowa.
Okay.
And it seems like they have a pretty well-established program and the different things they do, and pretty cool to see. Now they're trying to get more women involved in. And they've got specialty programs just for them, to where they feel comfortable in an environment where they're learning around other women and getting out in the field. And I think they even have a program where at the end of it, if they continue all the way through it and they go on the mentored hunt, they get to keep the bow that they use throughout the process and stuff like that. It's pretty neat to see that kind of thing. Hopefully maybe one day they can bring that into Illinois or something
and
like that.
That's one of the hardest parts about R3 is scalability. How do you scale a program like that to actually be effective and cost effective? Because again, we're trying to balance this loss of conservation funding. We're trying to recruit new hunters, but we also need to be conscious that it doesn't cost $15,000 for every recruited hunter you get.
Right.
And so scalability is one of those big challenges.
I think one of the biggest things, and a lot of people see it as a barrier, maybe you can talk on that too, is affordability. People see hunting as a super expensive thing, and it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't. And that's one thing we've really tried to focus on, especially at our in-person workshops. And again, these are designed for people over 18 years of age or older, who we view it as people who've never gone hunting, never picked up a bow, not a firearm. So we anticipate them coming at a kind of a baseline zero. And so what we really strive for is to push that, hey, you don't need the Raven $5,000 crossbow. You don't need all the Sitka camo gear. If you have the disposable income and you want it, go right ahead.
Yeah.
But we really try to highlight the DIY aspect of things, and a lot of our content really focuses on public land hunting. For that specific reason is that you can do it cheaply, you can do it affordably, but if you know what you're doing, you can also do it very, very effectively.
Yeah. I think crossbow is a hot button.
Yeah, sure.
For a lot of people.
Yep.
Even Pope and Young and things like that. But I see it as a gateway drug.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
I have a crossbow. I took some friends that had never been hunting before. I took them on a hog hunt, right? A rich resource that's just, target-rich environment.
Where at?
Down in Texas.
Oh, nice.
Down in Texas. And I actually speared a hog down there too.
Hey,
really
that's
fun,
cool.
Yeah. So for them, it got them hooked, and they want to hunt more now.
Sure.
And I see that. The only problem I do see with crossbows is people picking it up thinking it's a rifle when really it's an archery thing, even though it is super easy to I think I shot 4 bolts before mine was sighted in and ready for those guys to hunt. I see that as being like not a challenge anymore, or what you consider fair chase.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I like the aspect of it. I don't think it's something that I like to see somebody continually doing. I want to see them progress and get into it other ways and maybe even go gun hunting or something. But I think it is an awesome opportunity for people to get out there. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear that. And I make people mad when I talk about it. I'm like, you know what? A crossbow is a great tool to get somebody outdoors. I don't care what they do with means of take, as long as they're ethical when they do it. They're respectful to that animal and the land that they're on. Absolutely. And I think that is the biggest key point that anybody can take away from it.
Sure.
And anybody that's negative about it, well, they don't realize that, like you said, we're losing that resource.
Absolutely.
And we want people out there no matter what, even if they are shooting a crossbow. And then you hear about people complaining in other states that now they're taking away resources because they're allowed. Now you're taking away tags from hunters that want to draw a tag if it's a draw system. And I could see a little bit of a problem with that, but we don't have to worry about that where we're at yet, because it's pretty much unlimited tags for archery season.
It really is. Yeah.
It really is. The only thing I see as a problem is we make it so restrictive for out-of-state residents. We're probably one of the most. You can buy an elk tag.
Yeah.
You can buy an elk tag for the amount of money that you pay to go hunt 2 deer in Illinois.
There's a reason most of these TV shows don't come hunt Illinois.
Yeah. It's crazy to me. And I think that's something that we need to really look at, especially if we've got so many deer that we have unlimited tags, right?
Sure.
Especially in the northern Illinois. And it may be crowded, but there's a lot of land that people don't cover.
There really is, yes.
And even like Midday-Win is a huge one, right?
Yep.
That is a giant piece of property. And I know for a fact there's a lot of spots that people don't go because they don't want to go 2 miles back and you can't cut a hole through a fence and climb underneath or do whatever. So there's properties out there for sure. And I want to see more people go there. And I know there's a lot of guys that are public land nomads that go everywhere except for Illinois because it's too expensive.
Yep. And I do want to kind of piggyback off the crossbow discussion we just had. I want to really emphasize that in the past 2 years, so what's it been? When that legislation first passed allowing, it's been probably 5 or 6 years.
5 before it became full season.
Yeah. And we hit an inflection point last year where we actually saw crossbows become a majority of the harvest over vertical bows. And that I anticipate that trend to only continue. And I just wanted to really highlight that it really is a gateway opportunity for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And especially for those who may have a physical limitation. I know they could obviously get some permits through a process historically, but one of the big things in Illinois, especially about deer hunting, is we just really highlighted it. We're a very archery-dominated state. And if archery is not something that's in your wheelhouse, maybe you just don't have time, maybe you don't have the physical ability to do so, you are really restricted on how much you can actually hunt deer in this state compared to pretty much every other state. And that's where I think Illinois really shines with the crossbow, is for those individuals who, in most states, they may just be a rifle hunter. They may just be a firearm hunter, where they may get 2 or 3 weeks. In Illinois, you may get 5 days if you're lucky to win a lottery. And so crossbow really does open up a lot more opportunity for those individuals. Again, I do want to emphasize you still need to practice with that equipment. It's not as easy as you may think. It still takes time to be competent, to become ethical with that specific method of take. But I really do think it's such a good gateway to get more people interested, to get more people out there, but also to give them a lot more time to hunt rather than just getting a shotgun or a firearm tag and have 3 or 5 days depending what they draw. Now they get that full spread of several months.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. What's it look like as far as have you guys been keeping track with the whole rifle season or whatever that is now?
Yeah. So do you have any specific things about it?
I'm kind of curious. I saw it definitely evolved and changed from what it initially was. It was one little blurb in there, and now there's an entire section, I believe. But what's that look like for you guys educating others and trying to get people out into the rifle and firearm season now?
So now for us as a program, we don't do a ton of firearm deer mentored hunts. A lot of it comes down to that scalability concept. And in Illinois, right, we have, first firearm season, second firearm season. It's very hard to get mentors who are willing to give away their personal firearm season to go take somebody new hunting. So in terms of mentored hunts, it doesn't really impact us too much. But we actually just filmed with one of the law enforcement conservation police officers just a few weeks ago. We're still cutting up the video, but doing a full breakdown on that rifle legislation, what's legal, what's not, and some kind of tips and techniques to make sure you're compliant there. But what I'm really interested in is seeing how many first-year adopters we have. I don't anticipate it to be a ton, but I think year over year we're going to start to see more and more, especially as you know, new calibers and new rounds come out that meet those specific criteria. I think we're going to start to see probably a lot more people use them. But
so do you think is there going to be, because I know during firearm season now you're allowed to use that rifle, which was normally just a shotgun.
Sure.
And then now you have muzzleloader. Is muzzleloader still exclusively muzzleloader?
I believe it can be used in both.
Okay.
Yes.
And then is there going to be like a separate rifle season as well that's like longer period than just...
As of right now, no. And
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything from the back end that would kind of allude to that either.
Yeah.
It just sounds like it's allowing a greater breadth of what you can use during firearm season. And we're seeing this in other states across the country too. Missouri, in the past 5 or 6 years, they historically had a muzzleloader season, but they kind of revamped that whole thing and are now calling it alternative season. So there's a lot of different methods of take that you can kind of use in that quote-unquote muzzleloader season. So I think it's all these states realizing that we're losing hunters and just trying to nitpick it. Hey, maybe if we open up and allow people to use this, maybe that'll increase us a little bit. Maybe if we can use this, and just kind of little baby steps here and there. But
yeah, I almost wish, honestly, it was like a week and a half was gun season, and then it was done and over with, rather than breaking up two of my weekends or 3 of my weekends, and then if you don't have a tag on public land, you can't hunt. You're out.
Right.
So it's like, man, you're killing my opportunities here to drag my bow out and go out
Absolutely.
into the public. But so what do you think about like means of access and stuff like that as far as land for people to get on it? Do you guys have an opinion on that as far as like being able to access from water? I know a lot of places say you can't access from water, and some of the best access points are from water. It's just like, to me, it doesn't make much sense that you have to park in a parking lot rather than a boat launch.
I agree. And unfortunately, from my understanding of some of the legislation there, when Illinois was first kind of settled, there was such we have such a different history than pretty much all the other states surrounding us. And that's what really led to the waterway rights we have. And unfortunately,
that changed for the worse.
Correct.
For some people,
Correct.
I guess. If you're a landowner and you're trying to protect your fossils and resources or whatever, different story.
Right.
But, yeah.
And unfortunately, I think the cat's almost out of the bag. I don't think that's ever going to shift. I think it's so ingrained in the way that land is owned in this state that it would take a monumental effort to get that changed, unfortunately. But again, I completely agree. Waterway access is one of my favorite ways to access, especially we were scouting a piece of public land in east central Illinois, and we found this really nice area that's kind of an oxbow. And it just turned, we think it's going to be one of these buck nests. We've got, already a couple cameras running this summer, and, 8 or 9 different really nice bucks are using it. The easiest way to access it is going to be by water. Yeah. Now, we're kind of lucky in that this property is right across the river, is also a piece of public land, and so we are legally allowed to access via water. But kind of going back to the whole concept of access, it is by far the number one constraint of both new hunters and existing hunters in the state. The Human Dimensions Lab at the University of Illinois does these hunter harvest surveys. And so if you've ever received an envelope, post-hunting season that asks you a couple questions, it's normally like a 5 or 6 page questionnaire, asks you about your harvest, what kept you out, these type of things. It's always access is that big constraint for people. And so for us as a program, obviously we're just 3 people. It's really hard to increase access, but what we're trying to focus on is to allow, kind of like what you mentioned at the very start, some of these county lands that may not have a deer hunting program, but know that they have an overabundance of deer herds. And so then it's our job to come in as a program and say, hey, can we work to develop a mentored hunt? We actually just started one at Kickapoo State Park, or Kickapoo State Recreation Area in Vermilion County, Illinois. About half of that Illinois DNR property is non-hunted. It's kind of a campground that's used for other user groups. what they have found is during deer season, what happens? Well, all the deer go to the non-hunting side, and so it just becomes overbrowsed. And so we partnered with Illinois DNR that said, hey, can we do a mentored hunt in this opportunity? A, we're increasing opportunity. We're giving more people the chance to get out hunting. But B, we're meeting their land management goals by reducing that doe population in that specific part of the park. And so it's an area that's full of campgrounds. We're hunting in campgrounds. Some shots are going over a road, but it's successful. We're getting a lot of new hunters out of it, and a lot of hunters are getting their first harvest through that program. And so that's kind of our big push in terms of access, is to not necessarily focus on acquiring new lands, but just increase opportunity at already existing public lands.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's like Kankakee State Park is a prime example of that.
Absolutely. Yep.
You see, you cannot hunt a certain section of it because it was by a prison, and it's a fisherman's parking lot.
Sure.
That prison has been vacant for 10 years now.
Sure.
And the land is overgrown, and it's state land, right? And then the state park owns the rest of it.
Yep.
But you cannot hunt it, and all those deer flock to that in the campground. And it's the most, like, the densest population I've seen standing in that field that I've seen in that area. And it's like, you can't.
Well, maybe that's another one to focus on for this next round.
Yeah,
because it's such a unique model in that, again, there's not a ton of overhead. We're not leasing land. We're not buying new land. All we're saying is, hey,
This is
here.
Yeah.
Let's put together a program. And the way we do it for this specific hunt is we have 6 blinds set up. Every hunter gets that specific blind. Who draws gets that for 5 days. And we evenly split it so that we have half youth and half adult. So we're kind of meeting both those niches. And we act as mentors for those who don't have a mentor. If someone's already got a mentor, when they apply, they can just check a box, I've got a mentor. And then if they're awarded a blind, they'll just get to go. So it's a really unique model, and it's been quite successful. We've had a lot of harvest through it, and a lot of people have already come back and say, hey, I'd like to volunteer the next round and be a mentor. And so not only are we, increasing opportunity, but we're rebuilding that social capital for these new hunters. I grew up, we'd go to a check station. You'd talk to all hunters. You'd hear their stories. You'd see all the deer. Those are gone. And so as a new hunter, it's very hard to get your foot in the door and to start kind of identifying yourself as a hunter and identifying yourself as, yes, I'm now a member of the hunting community. And these mentored opportunities just are such a perfect segue for that.
Yeah, when you say that, the check station, when I was in high school, I worked at a bait shop.
Oh, sure.
So they got us all together, all the employees. They had the DNR employee come there. We had the key ring, the giant key ring with all the jawbones on it, like you have on your table over there.
Yep.
And they'd explain it to us. This is how you age it. This is what you do. You write it down. And then at the end of the year, end of the season, they'd come and pick up that journal of all the deer that you logged in.
Sure.
And I remember just doing that. And it's like, yeah, you don't have that
anymore.
You
don't.
It's all online check-on. You could do it on your phone or whatever. It's completely changed.
Completely.
The dynamic has changed. And you don't have that interaction anymore like you used to.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I think mentored hunts are just so valuable, because not only are you getting a new person out there, providing them some level of confidence. That's one of their biggest constraints, is even if they've come to some of our workshops and they've shot archery, we've got them up in a tree stand, they've done all this, they're still like, yeah, but I just don't personally feel like I'm ready. And just having somebody right next to them to just help them with those little decisions that they need to make when you're out hunting. Like I took a new hunter out on one of those Kickapoo ones last year. His name was Minaj. He's an immigrant over from India, currently on a visa status, so his, experience with hunting is completely different from mine. But when he got in the blind, we had, about 12 or 13 does out in front of us, and I'm sitting there like, hey, come on, let's take a shot. Let's pick one. This one's, perfect. And he just couldn't get over that level of, I don't quite feel ready yet. Oh. And so it took him about another 5 to 10 minutes just to calm his breath, collect himself, and luckily we had a nice doe walk in, within 10 yards of the blind or so, and he made a perfect shot. But again, it's these things that myself as a hunter, I don't even think of. I've been through this so long that I can't. It's very hard to put myself in their shoes, and so these mentored hunts kind of allow us to do that, to see what the landscape of hunting looks like through their lens.
Yeah, I totally get it. I mean, the first animal I took was in my teens, or early adulthood. But I'd killed small game and everything since a child, so you don't really you think about taking the life, but it's not as heavy on you as if you've never taken one until later on into your adult life.
Right.
And I never really thought about that much either until I took my friends hunting, and then they're like, I just need a minute to process this.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty cool, and I always try and teach them, to hold that animal in a high reverence and give it respect that it needs to. So I think that's a good aspect. So you mentioned a little bit about the mentors. What is the criteria, or what if, say, somebody does want to become a mentor, what do they need to do?
So we do a lot of personal vetting. We don't run any background checks or anything. We're starting to kind of formalize the approach, and this is the big challenge with mentored hunts kind of across the country. Every state deals with this in a little bit different ways, the whole concept of liability. And that's been our biggest hang up right now. And so a lot of what we do is very one-on-one interactions with individuals, and not so much that we say, hey, we've got a mentor for you, here's their number. But what we really try to do is to get those two individuals in the same place at the same time, get new hunters in the same place as existing hunters, and a lot of times those relationships just happen themselves. For instance, we just had kind of our first, what we tried is a trivia night, so just a social event designed to get hunters back together. And we invited new hunters and existing hunters, and out of that trivia night, there was several mentored hunts that got planned just right then and there. Just go talk to somebody and say, hey, I'm a new hunter, I'm looking to try this, and boom, things get planned. But if you're really interested in becoming a mentor with us, one of our biggest events is coming up on September 23rd. It's at Deacon's Restaurant and Bar at the Golf Farm. It's in Wakanda, Illinois, but we call this event Illinois Hunt Camp. And if you've ever been to a typical NWTF banquet, a typical Pheasants Forever banquet, you're kind of going to understand the model to some extent. But instead of really focused on the gear, on winning firearms and winning trail cameras, tree stands, what we try to do is we put together a package of outdoor experiences, be it mentored hunts, be it scouting trips, be it processing. A lot of them are mentored hunts, and designed to then allocate those at hunt camp through, different lotteries, raffles, and games. So instead of winning a shotgun or something, you're getting the chance to win a mentored hunt that you're going to get to go on and take that next step. So if you're interested, please reach out to us at any time, because we're always looking for more mentored hunts to put together for hunt camp, because we try to shoot for about 50 to 60 hunts to give away at that, and hopefully we'll meet that by September 23rd.
Okay. So does the state allocate tags for this then?
Not currently. Not currently.
So they still need to purchase a tag?
Correct.
Or, are most of them archery then?
The vast majority are going to be archery, absolutely. Okay. Now, we do get quite a bit of upland hunting as well as small game. So for deer, it's primarily going to be archery, but obviously with upland, waterfowl, and small game, there's other options there too.
So when you talked about the Kickapoo recreation area that you use, is that something to where maybe the state could do? We've
actually had conversations. Yeah. Actually, this past week about
because
that
there aren't
idea.
Any tags for that anyway.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? So why couldn't that be an opportunity to produce more firearm tags and just allocate them to these special programs?
Sure.
It seems like a logical idea to me.
And a lot of it depends on.
Who do we need to lobby for that? That's the question.
And you kind of hinted at the exact concept right there. Is a lot of it depends on the legislation that's already on the books and how that's written. Now, there are some really cool ideas that other states are doing kind of around that concept. Like Pennsylvania, I heard that they're wanting to kind of revamp the whole concept of a youth season and kind of make it more of a new hunter season. So less about age, more about experience. Now, obviously, if you're youth, even if you've been hunting for 7 or 8 years, you could still go under that youth hunt as long as you meet those age requirements. But they're trying to increase even more opportunity through, already established kind of quote-unquote new hunting season. So there are quite a few options out there. I know Wisconsin also, they have, through the General Assembly, they actually allocate a certain number of permits for R3 efforts, so for a learn to hunt mentored hunts. And so that's something we're certainly working on. We actually just had a meeting about it last week. So definitely on our radar, and we're pushing forward on it.
What kind of classes do you guys offer, or I know you talked about the trivia night and stuff like that, but as far as educational stuff
absolutely
that people go to, I've seen you have some clinics here and there, placement clinics and stuff like that. How does that work? How does it, one, go to one of those, and then just kind of an idea of how many that you guys actually offer, different ones? Sure.
So kind of our bread and butter is what we call our standard Learn to Hunt workshops. So we actually are getting ready to kick off our big season, pretty much starting the day we leave here from Deer and Beer Fest, with our Learn to Hunt Deer workshops. And these typically run from about 10 a.m. to 3:30. And they're, again, kind of designed for if you have zero experience, this is the clinic for you. You're going to learn about the basic equipment. You're going to learn about the basic regulations. You're going to learn about processing, about the ecology of the animal. That's one thing we really focus on, is understanding that game animal's behavior so that you can make, decisions in your hunt planning processes. And so it's really designed to go from kind of start to finish. Now, obviously, we can't cover the whole gamut of hunting in, a 5 to 6 hour workshop, but it's designed to give you at least a little bit of information that you start to feel confident, you start to kind of foster that interest a little bit, and we try to make it very fun and enjoyable. And so one thing we really strive to do is at these workshops be as hands-on as possible. We don't want to sit there and just lecture and give a presentation for 5 hours. We want to get a tree stand in your hand and have you go put it up. We want to go take a walk through the woods and show what a deer bed looks like, rather than just showing what a picture looks like. Show what it actually looks like on the ground. And so these are kind of our basic workshops. Now we have a Learn to Hunt Deer, we have Learn to Hunt Waterfowl, we have Learn to Hunt Small Game, which covers squirrel, rabbit, dove, and then we have a Learn to Hunt Upland series as well. In those, we really try to partner with like a Pheasants Forever chapter or some of these other NGOs to try to get a dog handler out there with dogs, so we can go through that whole process of showing how to hunt with a dog, how to hunt without a dog. Here are some things to kind of keep in mind.
Get you a buddy that's not afraid to run through brush.
Exactly.
If you don't have a dog, get a crazy friend.
Yeah. But so those are kind of our basic Learn to Hunt workshops. And at the very end of the workshop, we always try to have a discussion or a demonstration about field dressing and processing. Obviously, with deer, it's a little bit more difficult to find that many carcasses.
I mean, you guys probably work pretty closely with the DNR then and get like seized ones and things
and
like that.
And we certainly have at times. Yeah. We use a lot of roadkill for demonstrations as well. But especially for like the waterfowl and small game, we will bring several carcasses. So you get to, again, not only hear the steps and see the steps, but you get to do it yourself. And that's been one of the most interesting aspects of this program for me, is how much people get hung up on the field dressing component. Now, luckily, I grew up in a hunting family, so when I shot my first deer, my dad said, I'll do this one for you. The rest you get to do on your own. So I never really had to put myself in that perspective of, oh my gosh, now I've got this giant deer dead at my feet, and now what do I do? And so we really try to focus on that aspect too, of how to prepare for, not just prepare for the hunt, but prepare for that inevitable harvest, and what to do, how to be ready, how to have all your equipment, and kind of understand. So those are our basic Learn to Hunt field workshops, and ideally at the end of those, we try to, again, scalability is difficult for us, but we try to connect those interested participants who want to take that next step. We try to connect them with a local chapter or a local mentor who can kind of help foster that interest a little bit more.
Yeah. One of the things that I find kind of crazy is the fact that most people take their deer to a processor. And somebody getting into it maybe doesn't have a lot of funds. That can be pretty cost prohibitive.
Absolutely.
To realize, oh my gosh, I've got to pay somebody $200 to chop up my deer and package it for me.
And maybe get your deer
guys,
back.
Yeah, a lot of guys I know don't even process their own deer, and like you said, you don't even get your own deer back. That's one of the things that bothers me the most, is somebody with a diesel can in the back of their truck leaking and sliding around there, and then they're driving it, taking it to a processor, and then my deer's going to get mixed with that? No, thank you. Not to me. I mean, but it's just fascinating, and to me, I want to break down that animal. I want to be intimate with every piece. I want to know that I trimmed 100%. It just the way I like it, and make sure it's clean and it's done right.
And what I really like about that aspect too is in terms of meal planning. If I get a deer from a processor, I may get back a chunk of backstrap that's 12 inches long. What the heck am I going to do with that? Where if it's just me processing it, I get to put it in the exact package how I want it. I already know how I'm going to cook it. And so, and we actually, just to kind of carry on that discussion, we host Learn to Process Deer workshops. We're planning a few of those this fall, where we're going to go through that entire process of, here's a deer carcass, how do we break it down, how do we quarter it, how do we skin it, how do we package it, and how do we prepare it. So those, we don't have any dates solidified currently. We're still working to try to source some deer for those. That's kind of our biggest challenge. But for mid-October, November, we will have several of those kind of scattered across the state.
So say somebody wants to donate a deer because they may have like nuisance tags or something like that on their property. What can they do, or how do you want them to handle that so they can maybe save one for you?
Absolutely, yeah. If you want to reach out to us, I would probably recommend reaching out to us pre-harvest.
Right.
So don't go out and shoot one and then call me and say, hey, now what do I do? Reach out to us beforehand, and we'll kind of come up with a nice plan. We work quite closely with the Vet Med Lab at the University of Illinois, they kind of do the state CWD testing and a lot of that stuff. But they have a really substantial walk-in freezer, and we're trying to reserve some space for that for this upcoming year. So hopefully we'll be able to accept deer like that, keep them cold until we get to a place where we're ready for them for the workshop.
Yeah. Do you feel that that's a big challenge, or a lot of people see the CWD as like a barrier as well?
I don't think so. I think a lot of new hunters, I don't want to say they gloss over it, but they don't necessarily understand the ramifications of what a lot of those words mean. So I don't think it's necessarily that they don't care. I think it's just an overall lack of education. But there are some people who come to workshops already, fired up and ready. Oh, what do I do if I'm in the CWD area? Is it even worth hunting? And so we do have those conversations quite a bit that, currently there's no research that says it's transmissible to humans, but if you do, end up harvesting one and it tests positive, you don't have to legally eat it. You can legally get rid of it. DNR will give you a new tag, that whole spiel. So
even though they didn't give me a new tag when COVID shut down my hunts.
I know. Same. I'll tell you, I finally drew the one turkey hunt that I've been trying to draw since I moved to Illinois. It was the year of COVID. I didn't get to do it.
Me too. Same thing.
Yep.
That was my first gun season since the initial turkey season back in, what was it, like 2002 maybe? Something like that?
Yeah.
Like, that was my first gun tag that I drew in that long. And I put in for like 3 years before that trying to get that piece of property.
Sure.
And never got it. And then
it sucks.
And then I remember just the state was like, nope, we're not in the business of refunds, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, well, are you at least using my money?
Right. Which was very frustrating because every other state, was pushing people to get outdoors. And
yeah. Or do I still get a chance next year at this? You know what
I
mean? Do I get put in a special lottery? Nothing. That burned me a little bit.
Same.
I will say that.
I won't disagree.
Yeah. So do you guys do like turkey hunting clinics and stuff like that?
Yes. Now, for turkey, we don't do a ton of mentored hunts because, again, the way permits are allocated is very difficult to plan a mentored hunt 6 months in advance on somebody who may draw a tag. Now, we have worked with some outfitters in the past that have allowed us to send students to them, and they kind of take them on a one-on-one mentored hunt. We actually did that with NWTF. I forget the exact outfitter we went down with in southern Illinois, but he got to go on a great turkey hunt. So we've done quite a bit of that, but we really focus on workshops and stuff for spring turkey. Now the big challenge with turkey hunting is kind of what we just hinted at, permit allocations and getting a permit. And so for us, it is quite challenging because let's say you're interested in turkey hunting. When do you usually start thinking about turkey hunting? It's probably March, right? Well, if you didn't put in for the application,
too late.
It's almost too late. And so we do a lot of, focused efforts around that time, trying to just remind people, hey, please put in your turkey application. But we usually host, probably 10 learn to hunt turkey workshops, in the spring to get ready. A ton of webinars about turkey hunting, about decoy placement, about calling, those type of things. So we do quite a bit of content around turkey hunting, but the biggest challenge for us has been mentor hunts. Now, we certainly do a lot of one-on-one mentor hunts where we'll, somebody will reach out to us and say, hey, I drew this permit. Perfect. We can go. We'll help. But in terms of an overall planned thing, it's a little bit more difficult around turkey than it is for some other species.
I always encourage people to get a fall tag.
Absolutely.
If it's available,
absolutely.
Get a fall tag.
Yes.
Honestly, the only turkeys I've ever killed
were
in the fall. They were with the bow. One was with the long bow on the ground, pretty cool, and the other one was with my compound out of the tree stand.
That's cool.
I mean, if the opportunity's there and
Yes.
the property that you're on allows it, I mean, for $5, I think, you're not coming home empty-handed if a turkey walks past you.
Yeah.
Is that something you encourage people to do? Or, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Jason, who's kind of sitting right next to me, he doesn't have a mic on, but he's turkey killing machine in the fall.
Yeah.
That's his jam.
I got one. My other buddy got one on the same property.
Yeah. So I highly encourage it, especially if you're already out there deer hunting, like you said, it's $5.
Yeah.
If you don't get it, you're probably going to see turkey, and you're going to really wish you spent that $5.
Yeah. Do you guys, maybe you've heard more than I have on it, but like an actual population decline in the state of Illinois?
Around turkey?
Yeah.
So Illinois has been, again, it kind of goes back to that COVID year. We were saved a little bit from some of the turkey decline that other states are starting to see. We were just actually at a Midwest Fish and Wildlife Conference earlier, I guess it was January, February timeframe. But there was a lot of discussion about this turkey decline. A lot of states are really now starting to throw research dollars at it to try to understand it a little bit more. I did have a conversation with a few of the turkey biologists, and kind of one of the leading theories currently is the overall lack of insect population. Mm-hmm. You know, I remember as a kid driving 50 miles, you'd have to clean your windshield. Yeah. Now you don't.
I honestly think the atrazine and the other things are affecting the turkey population. And not only that, and I've said it before, but, and maybe you guys don't want to comment on this, and you don't have to, but the fact that all these things they're putting on the fields are affecting the wildlife because it's affecting the food sources. And believe it or not, there is links to sterility in not only humans, but all these animals as well. And you're seeing where normally it was 6 eggs and 6 poults or 9 poults, you're seeing 3 or 4. And then it's kind of like, wow, maybe there is something there.
Yeah.
And then not to mention, though, I mean, there has been a huge increase in bobcats and mountain lions in the state as well. So if you've got these other apex predators now for the Midwest, I mean, that's going to bring it down quite a bit too.
Absolutely. I kind of want to bring back that the insect population, because this is something I've really noticed just in my own anecdotal experience. I used to walk, through a prairie in the spring, and you would just see grasshoppers and everywhere bugs would be. And what are hens feeding on to get that protein for egg development? Right there. And if we're starting to see this decline already, it's getting a little hairy. But I know there are a lot of states that are starting to dump a lot of research dollars to try to understand what's causing this decline. And I think, like you kind of mentioned there, it's going to be kind of a multifaceted reason that's going to probably rely on a little bit of chemicals interacting with insect populations, a little bit of habitat stuff, a little bit of apex predator stuff. I think there's going to be a lot of different variables that really come into play there.
Yeah. I'm just kind of curious, what do you guys see as far as like mountain lion tags? I'm sure you're probably a little bit more on the pulse than not mountain lion tags, bobcat tags.
Sure.
I mean, you see, for a while there, it was pretty much like you could get one, and then it was a lottery, and you can't draw again for like 3 years or something like that. Do you see that changing in the future as the population increases even more?
I can't speak specifically on the population in Illinois, but just viewing how other states have kind of handled this situation, I do think so. Like Wisconsin, for instance, they had a very similar model to Illinois, where there was maybe 1,000 or 2,000 permits available. Every single year, more and more people started putting in for them and putting in for them and putting in for them. And it almost became like this ethos around itself, like, oh, you got a bobcat permit.
Yeah.
And to the point now where they are increasing the number of tags allocation just because there's more people interested in them. There likely are more in some of these landscapes. So I could see Illinois in sometime revisiting that number. Again, I don't have any background information on what that population actually looks like, but I know personally I'm anxious to get a bobcat tag in my in my pocket.
Yeah,
it's been a few years.
I haven't seen any on like most of the properties in northern Illinois, but you start heading a little bit further south.
Sure.
And there's definitely sign.
I've got a few trail cam pictures.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So if somebody wants to get into the Learn to Hunt program, they want to find different classes, maybe in their area or wherever, where do they go? How do they find that stuff?
The easiest way is to visit our website at learntohuntil.com. You can also just Google Illinois Learn to Hunt. It'll pull that up right away. But what we really want to highlight is no matter your experience level, a lot of our content, especially on the webinar side, is not necessarily is devoted to new hunters. There's always different things to learn. Like, for instance, one of our deer stand placement webinars, it's kind of become one of our favorites because it really dives into how to look at imagery, how to look at the landscape, how to look at the sign, and basically develop a hunt planning process around what you're seeing on the landscape.
Yeah.
And so I highly encourage anyone who's interested to check out our YouTube channel. If you just search Illinois Learn to Hunt on YouTube, you'll find all of our webinar recordings from the past 3-4 years. There's quite a few of them on there, and pretty much every topic is discussed at some point, whether it's waterfowl identification, whether it's how to read the wind for an upland hunt. We have a webinar that basically covers most of it.
Awesome. That's awesome. I like what you guys are doing. It's good to see that you're educating and recruiting and practicing the 3 R's. Thank you for coming on and sharing
Thanks
all the knowledge.
Us.
Yeah, it's been good.
Absolutely.
And once again, thank you so much for listening to the Publicly Challenged podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please subscribe on whatever platform it is you're listening to. Also, if you could leave a review, that would help us out. And you can check us out on Instagram or at publiclychallenged.com. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the show.